Welcome to episode 2 of the Daily Faceoff Rundown Insider Edition here on Daily Faceoff. I'm Irfaan Gaffar, and as he will be with me all season long, sometimes in person, who knows, when we do this show, my good friend and your favorite Italian, David Pagnotta.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. Thank you. Azzurri twice getting back on track for the World Cup. Estonia, Israel, they should have taken care of it, and they did. So that made me happy.
This is a hockey show, David. We will get to your soccer allegiances a lot later on this season, I'm sure. We're going to be joined by NHL agent Brian Bartlett, represents among many others JT Miller, Matt Boldy, Clayton Keller, Cooley Makar, and Logan Cooley. Should be an interesting conversation. I'm excited to hear his thoughts on the CBA. We'll ask about some of his clients, obviously, and our favorite topic, cap going up. I'm sure he'll have plenty to say there. But, David, let's start here. Just 1 week into the NHL season, what's been the biggest surprise for you so far?
Well, I mean, the sky is falling in New York, apparently. The New York Rangers can't score at home, and JT Miller is trying to get everybody to chill and relax and not blow things out of proportion, which to a certain extent I get. But, with what's going on there, what's going on in Buffalo, even the Islanders a little bit off to a slippery start. The New York State's a little questionable at the moment for the hockey stuff. I'm a little bit surprised there, to be perfectly honest, Surf. Like, I didn't anticipate the Rangers starting the way they did. But this is the cards that I guess they're dealt right now. But they gotta right the ship pretty quickly here before panic does set in. So a little bit surprised there, buddy. When
you look at Buffalo, the Rangers, I think, will figure it out, as will the Islanders, you hope, and fans in Long Island hope as well. But Buffalo's the one that obviously interests me the most. You have the head coach calling out the team very early in the season. You have fans that have survived, that have been through absolute hell the last decade and a little bit, throwing jerseys on the ice. Like, they've had bad hockey teams. It must need to be really bad in Buffalo for jerseys to be going on the ice. I mean, look, I think people around kind of know there's going to be some sort of change depending on what the change is. Where do you kind of think that direction is going?
I mean, look, they lost the first 3 of the season last year, and then they got back on track the rest of October. Let's see if maybe they do it again. I mean, the game against Ottawa tonight is going to be important, obviously, for them to pull something on. But yeah, they're a little bit depleted on the injury side. They don't have their goalie. They've had some forwards out. I think Benson might be getting in, but as we're recording this, that's the chance that he might get in tonight. But you have to look up top. You have to look at Kevin Adams. And, well, you mentioned we're going to have Brian Bartlett on. He also represents Alex Tuch. Mm-hmm. And they've got a big negotiation that they're trying to figure out, and they want to keep him, but, it's going to cost a lot. I'm sure he's not going to get into the nitty-gritty of details, but, it's you're going to have to get him in Buffalo. You're going to have to pay a Sabres tax. And it's the fact that they're so troublesome for so long. You're gonna have to compensate a little bit for that if you want to keep a guy like Alex Tuch, who's a local kid who wants to stay, but he's got to get that money in. I think a lot of this, this month, maybe the next week, is really going to be determining the future and dependent on how long Kevin Adams really does stay in that position. The noise is starting to brew a little bit, starting to get a little bit louder, that they may go in some type of direction. Obviously, they brought in Jarmo Kekalainen at end of May as a senior advisor, and he's been bouncing around. I'm here in Toronto. He's been at a few games here so far. He was there last night, taking in their Leafs matchup against Nashville. I don't know how much longer you can really wait before you have to start considering significant change from the top. Because, again, you can't sustain this year after year after year. I can only imagine, honestly, how frustrating the fans are over there.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one fan base that is stuck through a team forever, it's been the Buffalo Sabres. So hats off, tip of the cap to the Sabres fans. Hopefully your ship will be righted very shortly. But again, it's going to take a long time. Like, whoever the next general manager or head coach or different players are in that organization, like, it's still going to get bad before it gets good. I mean, you don't just turn teams around in a year.
No, and look, if they're going to make these types of changes eventually, or they're thinking about it down the road, are you giving your GM the ability to make wholesale roster changes now? Like, I know they moved out Dylan Cousins last season, but if the Bo and Byram talks pick up, if teams are asking about Owen Power, if they don't get Tuch signed, and it's just after the Olympic break, if you're going to replace your GM, are you going to let him make big moves like that? I don't know. Probably not. Like they may have to, with all that considered, they may have to make those types of changes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting and definitely some trying times in Buffalo right now. A team that not really was in the same position, but, near the bottom of league standings for a little bit was the Philadelphia Flyers. Obviously, They pay a lot of money for their head coach and Rick Tocchet. He goes and takes that job there. He's obviously a very well-respected man. I think he's in the Flyers Hall of Fame there in Philadelphia. But what's the latest with Philadelphia and Owen Tippett?
Yeah, look, with you mentioned it, it's another team going through the ringer a little bit, but they went through the rebuild purposely, and so far it's been working out for them.
Yep.
And there's an incline there in Philly, whereas the Buffalo, as you said, they're stuck in the mud, unfortunately. But when you've got guys like Forrester and Mishkov and others that are taking starting to earn more responsibility in that group. And you've got a guy like Owen Tippett who is signed long-term, cap hits in the sixes for what he's capable of doing. His price tag is really fantastic, especially in a couple of years when the cap's going to be like near 120. So
cap going up. That's one.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to see, I think, some teams poking around on Philadelphia to see what they want to do with Owen Tippett. We'll see how the season progresses. Nothing is imminent by any stretch, but I'm starting to get a bit of an inkling from a few teams out there that he's going to be a guy that some teams are going to target. Now, he has a limited no trade that kicks in July. This is his final year without any no trade protection. So maybe, depending on how the Flyers do this season, and depending on what his responsibilities and roles are, like he may lock into a second line position or first line position for the full duration of the season, put up strong numbers, become a staple as part of their core right now. But with guys, again, like I mentioned, with Forster, with Mishkov, obviously they've got Konechny and so on. If some of these guys, take some of those spots, or at least some of the ice time away from them, I could see Philadelphia at least listening on Owen Tippett. Again, nothing imminent now, but it wouldn't surprise me, depending on how the dominoes fall for this team, if teams really start to poke a little bit harder on a guy like that.
And I think that when you look at Owen Tippett and his contract, he's 26 years old, former first-round pick. Yep. Like, the kid's just entering his prime. So you'd think if there was an inquiring team, it would be someone that has its window very much so open right now if they were looking to make one of those types of moves. I actually just wanted to ask you about moves for a second. Like, there's a lot of teams and a lot of fan bases now that are calling for teams to make moves. You got here in Vancouver, the sky's already falling. It's OVAH right now here in Vancouver. We can talk about that in a couple of weeks. But I've always said that teams look at their teams and decide kind of what they want to do around American Thanksgiving. Is that a sense that you get? Because I really think that the first week of the season, the first 3-4 games is really a feeling out process. Like, you go through a really long training camp. You have, for some teams, a really long preseason, and then it finally gets to play for keeps. So maybe not in the first few weeks, unless the team is desperate. That's when a move is really going to be made.
Right. And playing for keeps, I mean, it's a lot different playing regular season games than preseason games.
Yeah.
The competition level is different just because you're playing with full NHL roster versus full NHL roster. And unless you're, beating the crap out of each other like Tampa and Florida, everyone else is kind of like, going through the motions. So it does take a few weeks for teams to really recognize what they have and where the holes truly are. Like, you may have an idea, but let's get through 5, 6, 7, 8 games and then have a proper understanding of what we've got as a roster. And you're right. Yeah. The US Thanksgiving, that's typically and traditionally the marker for when teams say, okay, now we're at the 20 game mark. we really got to do something here if we want to make noise this season. The one thing I will say is because of the cap and because teams have more space to play with now than really ever, I could see some movement happening sooner. I mean, look, we all expected there to be a lot of moves in the summer, so
It's true.
didn't happen. But because of extra cap space now, and yeah, teams like to accrue as the season moves along, but because teams have more flexibility to add, because they have space, I could see some teams pulling the trigger on something earlier than they typically would because they've got that window to do it financially. And they don't have to eat up LTIR. And obviously we know that that dynamic has changed a little bit. But I'm curious there. And with Philly, like Philly doesn't have to do anything. They could sit back and wait and see if a team gets desperate enough. And this, it could go near the deadline. It could go to the summer with respect to a guy like Owen Tippett. And I would imagine, unless, Danny Briere is blown out of the water immediately, that he's willing to wait things out because they do like the player. But him, Anthony DeMarco had reported that Emil Andrea is available too.
Okay.
A young, steady defenseman who's just starting to make, significant inroads into the National Hockey League in terms of being a regular. But I know that as he's reported, I checked in as well. Yeah, the Philly's willing to listen on him. They're willing to move him as well. So we'll see kind of what happens in Philly, but that's an example of teams being a little bit more willing to make moves earlier than they have. But again, really curious, Irf, to see what Philadelphia ends up doing here, because I know there are teams that are looking at Owen Tippett going, that's probably somebody we should poke around on a little bit more as the season moves along.
Well, especially if the magic words are if he becomes available.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if that happens, then you're going to have some Sharks circling. We'll get to the Sharks. I thought it'd be a great transition, but I want to stay out east for a second.
Nice.
You saw this team a couple of times. Well, you saw them once, obviously, in Toronto, and that was the Detroit Red Wings, and then Toronto losing in Detroit. Detroit always plays Toronto well at home, in Detroit, but the Yzer plan. We've heard about this for so long, and what the plan is there in Detroit. Hearing there could be some things on the horizon with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, and specifically on the back end, they signed a lot of guys, a lot of defensemen this past summer for some reason, and added some pieces. I think they were trying to decide if their younger guys were ready to start making those inroads into a full-time NHL slot, and they weren't sure, so they cushioned it. But this is a team that's been looking for added offense. We know this is a club that's looking at the center position as well, just in terms of adding and strengthening the overall roster. But yeah, there is some talk that the Wings are looking at and open to moving some of their defensemen, and I think there's mutual interest there from the player side of things. So here's a couple guys. So Eric Gustafsson and Travis Hamonic. Those are a couple veteran pieces, different type of defensemen, but veteran pieces that they've brought in. And it doesn't look like there's much room for some of these guys. So I think they've started to explore that possibility of moving them, or at least letting everybody know that or maybe select them now. Everyone will know that there's, some availability there with respect to those guys. I think they'll listen on a few others in terms of their roster. Jonathan Berggren's another player up front that has been out there before. Kind of came into his own a little bit last season, but it's been, we'll see how consistent his ice time is and game time is moving forward for Detroit. So they've got a bunch of different pieces that they're willing to explore on. But because of the plethora of guys on that back end, don't be surprised to hear guys like Hamonic and Gustafsson's name out there, especially in the next little bit.
How surprised are you, or I guess a lot of it has to do with the play of Axel Sandin Pellikka, right?
Yeah.
There's a guy that they didn't really know probably what to expect out of, and now, by all accounts, he's probably QB for power play too. Yeah,
and that's the thing. I think that's why, Yzerman tried to cushion the team a little bit by bringing in veteran pieces last year and this year. Because they just didn't know when these guys were going to take those next steps and when those guys were going to be able to kind of claim full roster spots, with obviously their performance doing the talking. And for him especially, it's at least in the early going, it's looking good, and he's taken those steps, and he's kind of earning that additional ice time, which is pushing some of the veteran guys out, even some of the newer guys. So, and this will be a trend, I think, with Detroit over the next season and a half, where some of these younger kids that are going to be implemented into their big roster are going to start pushing some of these other guys out, and then they've got to look around to see what kind of moves are available to them. But again, because of and Gustafsson's an offensive type of guy, so to eat up that power play time, to eat up that extra time, for him especially, you almost have no choice but to start exploring the market. But again, Hamonic's an interesting one because there were only select kind of teams he was interested in going to. So I'm curious to see where things go from that perspective, in terms of his willingness to obviously get moved and go to a different team.
The team would have to be very much so in the desperate need for a Travis Hamonic type of player. He's had a great career. I just, maybe the wheels are getting a little bit slower now for Travis Hamonic and the Detroit Red Wings, but we'll see. I mean, we've seen stranger things happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, for a depth guy, because I think that's kind of where he's at right now.
Yeah, of course.
You like those veteran type of pieces from an experience perspective, excuse me. But I think there's going to be more of an interest at looking at a guy like Gustafsson than Hamonic. That's kind of what I've been reading the last couple of days. But obviously, we'll wait and see, and we'll see what kind of comes across Steve's desk.
What were you doing at 18 years old? Actually, you know what? Maybe don't answer that question.
I don't know if we want to answer that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you should answer. I definitely don't want to answer that question. Michael Misa making his NHL debut. There we go. It was there. There was something there. Yeah. Michael Misa making his NHL debut for the San Jose Sharks. Obviously, another player, 18 years old, making the jump, and deservedly so, to play in the NHL. My question to you about the San Jose Sharks is, they're frisky, they're fun, they're young, they got a little bit of bite, but what really are the San Jose Sharks, and what do they hope to try and accomplish?
Yeah, this is a team that wants to start taking those next steps, a la Anaheim Ducks that have been doing that. They haven't loaded up with as many veteran pieces, I would say, in terms of core assets that they're bringing in. Like, obviously, they have Toffoli, he's the main guy there. They signed a lot of defensemen. And traded for some defensemen, all on expiring deals with their guys. I'll get to that in a second. But they've got Askarov. They've got a ton of young talent up front, with Misa included. But this is going to be a team that is going to continue to look to really solidify their back end. And they've got some kids in the system, obviously. But I think this is a scenario where they really want to strengthen their blue line. And this goes back to the summer. This goes back to probably even last season, where they've been looking to bring in young defensemen that are going to fit this team moving forward. And kind of like what they've got, obviously, up front. So I think next steps for them is really stabilizing that blue line from a longevity perspective. They have Mario Ferrero, Timothy Liljegren, Nick Leddy, John Klingberg, Dmitry Orlov, 5 guys on expiring contracts. I think 3 of them they brought in over the summer. These are guys that they're likely to move later on this season. And for Mario Ferrero, I think he's open to it. And this goes back to last season too, from what I've been told. He hasn't asked for a trade or demanded anything like that, but with everything that's going on there, I think there's a oh no, I've been traded. Oh shucks. Like I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think he's gonna be dishing out any tears over this. Again, not to say that he wants to leave per se, but because of that rebuild, I think he wants to a shot at competing for a playoff spot. So we're gonna hear Ferrero's name later on in the season. All those guys I mentioned are going to be players that are going to be available throughout the season. But I think the overall goal for San Jose is to find a way to bring in young talent on that back end. So we'll see kind of, what happens there. Is Andrea out of Philly? Is that a potential? I think that fits the mold of what they're looking at there, plus higher ceiling. But we'll see what Mike Greer has up his sleeve later on this year.
Is San Jose a place where there's a little bit, like you mentioned, the tax that's going to be happening in Buffalo tax. We know about the Winnipeg tax. We've heard about the Columbus tax. We've heard about, these markets that owners probably got to pay a little bit more. Speaking of owners, Hasso-Plattner had an insane interview where he kind of went out and let everything go for a guy that doesn't really speak at all to the media, the Sharks owner. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. There's some really, really good stuff in there. But just about the San Jose Sharks, is it becoming desirable now because of the young pieces they have up front in Will Smith, in Macklin Celebrini, in Michael Misa? Like, is it becoming a place where you think that guys are like, okay, you know what? I'm living in California. Things aren't too bad. Maybe if I'm a free agent, maybe that's somewhere I want to go now.
I think it's starting to get to that point.
Yeah.
Starting to get back to that point. And by the way, the owner said a lot of things the players at the time would have liked to have said.
It's true.
So like he was just straight up honest, and very, very accurate to some of those guys' surprise. That said, with this team where they're at now, kind of now on that incline, yes, the short answer is yes. I think there are going to be players that are going to look at this going, I get a long-term deal with this group. I can be a part of this team getting back to winning in San Jose. Like they had a long stretch where they were on the cusp. They had that Stanley Cup appearance, losing to Pittsburgh. They hosted an All-Star weekend. Like there was a lot of hype in that market and the surrounding market for NHL action. And now that they're kind of not back, but getting back to where they kind of want to be, I do. Like nobody wants to lose. Nope, nobody does. And if your team, whether it's New York or in Toronto or wherever, if your team is crap, nobody wants to be part of that next step. They want the following step. Like, you guys get better, and then I'm in.
Yeah, it's true.
That's just the reality of it. And I think San Jose's now at a point where they're in that next step quadrant, or at least getting to that level. Look, this season obviously is what it is. It'll be another growing pain type of season for this club, but the objective here is to have those guys, like you said, Celebrini, Smith, Dickinson, etc., taking next steps in their careers. And let's see what they do in the summer. But again, with the depth and the pieces that they have on that back end, let's see what type of moves they end up making in terms of moving assets out, and then maybe collecting some of those pieces and flipping those for NHL-ready young defensemen.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because you don't really think of San Jose as one of the traditional places where their players are definitely wanting to go. But you're right about that. Like, guys don't want to be a part of a rebuild. They want to be a part of, okay, you've done what you needed to do. Now you're just getting me to go over the edge and push now. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, especially with the free agent class in the next few years. I think that, the San Jose Sharks are going to be on the rise a lot quicker than people might think. But, Canada, we stand on guard for who is the best team in Canada, and why might it be the Montreal Canadiens with how much fun they're having?
Yeah, they're looking good. And that's the key right there, what you just said. Like, they're having fun, and they look like they're having fun while they're doing all of this. Hudson locks into his extension. He's got a couple assists on the season last year, assisted on the game winner, last night. Cole Caulfield's feeling good. Nick Suzuki's, league leader in assists with 6 right now, tied with Malkin. The guys,
Ivan Demidov,
and he pots in a nice one, and set up the opener. There's a lot of reason to be excited there. Kirby Dach got on the board last night, which is great for the Habs, and then you've got Noah Dobson contributing as well. There's a lot of optimism in Montreal, as there should be, and a lot of excitement as well.
Our guest has joined us. Thank you for coming on, Brian Bartlett. Pleased to have you join us. Thank you for doing this, obviously representing a lot of players in the National Hockey League. My first question to you is, I asked Dave this, we're a little bit over a week into the NHL season. Anything surprise you, stick out to you over a week now?
try not to fall into the trap that you guys are setting. Not you guys
No,
specifically,
I'm not.
but
I'm going to ask
media
you straight
fans.
up later.
I try
I'm
not to
asking
react
you
to anything a weekend. Yeah, too easy to say, oh, hey, this team's great, this team's struggling,
It's
these
true.
guys are destined for greatness or destined for the basement a couple games in. So I try to keep the blinders on, enjoy the games, just glad that we're back into hockey here. But it hasn't been anything shocking because I try not to draw any conclusions one weekend. Maybe next week.
Look, that in with everything going on in the National Hockey League, Brian, like one of the big takeaways for me, and I think for a lot of people now and moving forward, is just the incline that the league is in. And everyone's talking about next round of contracts for people, restricted guys, potential UFAs. The cap projected at 104, but the internal discussions and the Board of Governors meetings, by the way, is happening today. There's a lot of projections that, hey, we may see 107, 108 next season. We may creep closer to 120 in a couple of years, where the original projection was 113 and a half. What does that mean to you in terms of the recent success of the league, and B, just how much HRR and overall league revenues are on such an incline, and what type of impact it's having across the board?
Yeah, it's a great testament, I think, to the growth of the league, or the Players Association and the league is doing to try to grow revenues. It's the international events that they're doing. It's in-arena stuff. It's different activations. It's engaging the players and the fans a little bit more. So that stuff's all great. And I think that the part of it, too, is we had the way that it got set up with COVID and the shortened seasons, is that just we were flat for so long that I think we all just kind of assume it's just going to be 2-3% growth. We go $500,000, $1 million a year growth, but we're back kind of on this 8-9% growth that it had been previous to that too. So it's great that we've kind of caught back up, that everybody's made themselves square, and now we're moving on. And I think that if you look at hockey and the numbers are big, there's no doubt about it. And there's no way to say that 17 million or 12.5 million or 1.5 million for players is a lot of money, right? For any of us.
Right.
But then you look at the other major sports, right? You look at what football players are getting, what basketball players are getting, baseball, international soccer. Hockey's still behind in a lot of those things. So I think it's catching up as the popularity grows. And now part of it, I think, is just everybody getting that internalized to say, oh, yeah, hockey players are also going to make $20 million, or hockey players are also going to make $25 million when the cap is double what it was before. And that's the same thing, I'm sure, when we're all thinking about Patrick Mahomes' contract, or we were looking at whatever, we're like, oh, this guy's making $400 million. I'm sure the quarterbacks that played 8-10 years ago were like, what in the world is happening, right? And I think some of the guys that signed a 7 or 8 year deal 7 or 8 years ago are now saying, oh, we're doing 15s now, we're doing 17s now. So I think it's just kind of the natural flow and progression. And at the end of the day, there are the Connor McDavids and the Kaprizovs and the Makars and those guys that drive value for owners. Franchise ownership is an amazing vehicle for growth right now. Those franchise values are going up, and it's on the back of the star players to a large amount. So I think it's good that the wealth is getting shared a little bit, and these guys can really benefit from that. And then what they do with it later, I think, is the amazing thing about hockey too, is that the charitable contributions, or what they do with the money, I think is also what doesn't get talked about. That just because it's going in their pocket doesn't mean it all stays there. There's been countless stories of that. So it's good for everybody, I think.
No, absolutely. And the funny part is, we sit here and we talk about it. We see these contracts, and all we talk about is cap's going up, and that's literally the only thing that we hear from really everybody. But internally, when you're looking at it and you see that, in fact, the cap is going up, in reality, players' contracts are going to be bigger. But when you look at it from a team perspective, with the way the cap is going up, how much do you think windows for teams are opening and accelerating a lot faster?
Yeah, it gets rid of the excuse of, hey, we can't do it, or we don't have room for it, or we just can't fit it in, or we can't make that trade because we don't have this or that. So I think it creates hopefully something where there's a lot more parity now, that in a tight cap environment, when everyone was at the cap, the margins were different. It was what teams were investing in other things, or what they were paying their coaches, or various things. And now hopefully every team, whatever team that you're a fan of, has room at the cap, if it's this trade deadline, it's next summer, next trade deadline, to make a move that helps them, whatever it is. If it's picking up a free agent, if it's making a trade to help that team be successful. So I think that's the positive from the fan side of it, is that there shouldn't be anybody that's totally out of it because of a contract that was signed 7-8 years ago that is jammed you up, or a general manager, despite best intentions, can't move something. There should be room for everybody to do something now. I think the interesting side that we're starting to hear from teams a little bit is just because the cap is going up and basically everyone has been at the cap when it was 80 something, right? Do the economics make it where every team is going to be a cap team going forward? That's an open question, I think.
We're going to be hearing more of the E word, by all accounts, expansion.
Better than escrow.
Yes, yeah.
There's like a good E word and a bad E word. So
I don't think you guys
rather the good E word. So good. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I don't think you guys got to worry about that anytime soon anymore. But yeah, knock on wood for that. But yeah, the good one, the expansion word, and Atlanta's mobilizing and on track by all accounts. There's Houston. Obviously, the league would love to be back in Arizona and Phoenix area, and there's a lot of interest in another market. I've talked to a few owners where their belief is that we're going to 36 at some point. It'll be staggered, but we're going to get there. Your thoughts on adding more teams, and then B, just what that means for the overall health of the league and the new jobs that it creates.
Yeah, if you look to see the success that Vegas has had coming in, the success that Seattle's had, maybe not in a championship way, but if you go to those games, it's an amazing kind of galvanizing thing for that city to have it, and the environment's incredible, and you get people who are cracking jerseys all over the place. Utah, although not expansion, has been a new market, right? And the Smith family there has been amazing owners, and you can see what you can do quickly with resources and the connections that you need to make things happen. So, our players that are playing in new cities, quote unquote, across the board has been a positive experience for them. So I think the kind of the old trepidation of an expansion team is going to be something that we're scrapping together, or the expansion draft doesn't make them competitive. I think those days hopefully are behind us, and I think the league's learned a lot of those lessons that you got to be competitive from day one. So, from our perspective, I think more jobs is good, right? More guys can play in the NHL. I spend a lot of time watching American League games, our clients in the American League, and the margin between those guys that are playing in the American League and those that are playing in the NHL is razor thin. So there's a lot of talent out there that can come and play in the NHL successfully. It's how you disperse the superstars, I think, to drive ticket sales and drive jersey sales and all those things. That's going to be the question. But hopefully now, totally unrelated seemingly, but I think it connects, is the whole idea of now you can go CHL to NCAA. You can go from the East Coast League to the NCAA now for a minute and go back, right? Like, there's so many more development paths for young players that I think we're optimistic over the next 4, 5, 6, 8 years, the player pool is going to continue to develop and grow, because there aren't those guys that maybe went to the CHL, kind of did just okay, right, for a little bit, and then just had to get out of the game or had to do something else. Those guys might have 2-3 more years on their runway if they can go to an NCAA program, or vice versa. A younger guy can get to the CHL earlier. Hopefully that kind of rises the whole tide of player development, the player pool, that we can then fill 36 teams at the same level that we're at now, or the same level that we were at 30.
Brian, I just want to piggyback on that for a second. When you talk about the CHL and the NCAA, how much has that changed things, or especially in your world, with players being able to now, play and then go to the NCAA, and you see players make these choices to do other things? Obviously, NIL and money has a lot to do with it, but obviously the development of some of these NCAA programs that are now turning into some pretty good programs that they do have, especially in the hockey world.
Yeah, it's totally shifted the landscape, I think, for the better, for the players' perspective, that you don't now at 15 years old have to make a decision which of two paths you want to go, with no ability to turn left again. So I think that's a huge positive for them. It makes it, I think, where the decision's less dire, and you can go and you can evaluate kind of in a year-by-year basis of what's going to be best for me now, what's going to be best for development. So that has been positive. For sure, it's a little bit interesting in that, basically players now are free agents every year, right? After you get to age 17, and it's, you start out probably when you're in mites, you're free agent, you can switch team to team. So that's a lot of the conversations that we're having with our clients is, part of what you need to get to the highest level to get to the NHL is that stick with itness, right? And a willingness to battle through adversity, a willingness to be mentally tough. So that, I think, is the flip side of it. If you always can have a grass is greener presentation to you, you got to be careful not to always jump at that, right? So that's going to be on the mental side of it for the players. But I think having more options in, we've been accused in the past of being pretty pro NCAA, I would say, relative to CHL. A lot of our NHL clients were NCAA guys. So now I think we're pleased that everybody can kind of experience this. And in the flip side, we're also glad that our players, where it's right for them, can go to the CHL, can really develop in top leagues. And then if they so choose to come back to the NCAA. So, from an agent's perspective, from a player advocate perspective, it's amazing.
All right, Brian, we let you get through this without dealing with some questions related to some of your
we might be getting some of your connectivity issues here soon, Dave. We'll see.
Oh no! Oh shucks!
Cutting out.
No. Funny how it works, right?
I anticipate some buffering. Okay.
Buffering Buffalo.
Smooth.
You represent I sometimes. You represent Alex Tuch. We know that there have been open lines of communication. Is there anything that you can update us on his status with the Sabres?
Yeah, no update at this time. The communication, as you mentioned, has been good, been consistent throughout the summer. We had some good conversations, got kind of the parameters of what everyone was thinking. It's very clear to us that the Buffalo Sabres would like Alex Tuch to re-sign long-term. That's been communicated very well, very clearly, very effectively by Kevin Adams and the staff there. And I think hopefully we've communicated back to them that Alex would be very happy to stay in Buffalo as well. Weren't able to kind of get to what made a deal before the season. And then at this point, we've just put it on the back burner, obviously. Things haven't started out perfectly there the first week in Buffalo, wins losses wise. I think I saw him here in Boston the other day. Competitive games, they're playing hard, they're not giving up on it. Like, I still think it's a better team than their record, but I think we've all kind of decided that it's best to just try to get some wins there and try to focus on what's going on. They've had some injuries. Alex is a leader on that team, both play wise and kind of in the room. So he wants to focus on that, not have it a distraction. So we've wanted to just kind of let everyone know, like, we're just going to put this on the back burner for a little bit. Doesn't mean that we're closing the door to signing. Doesn't mean anything. Just means that, for the time period, he's got to try to help the Buffalo Sabres win games.
Yeah. There was a report out of Utah that suggested that, there was maybe a contract that was turned down with, Logan Cooley and the Utah Mammoth. I just want to get your, reaction to it or kind of clear up any sort of air that there may have been. And, it's my understanding that, it's Utah's now. We see what they're doing with their practice facility, see what they're doing with the in-arena experience, that it's becoming, a place that, people want to go and play and definitely hockey growing in that community.
Yeah, Utah is definitely turning into a destination for hockey players to go. Management team, ownership team, as I spoke about before, in terms of new teams, has done everything they can to try to build a winner there. So they're still going. And for Logan Cooley specifically, won't comment on particular offers or that. It certainly didn't come from us. I don't think it came from the team. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can flush right off of X, so that might be one of them. But we've had conversations in kind of the same light. Little bit different, I think, for a 21-year-old when you're talking term, right? Like, just the same thing. Like, a 21-year-old, he's got another year on his deal, so there's no urgency or rush on it yet. 8 years on that. 9 years ago, he was 12 years old, right? Like, why won't you make a decision for 9? Like, that's 50% of my life, right?
Yeah.
So long-term contracts for anybody to say, this is not Utah specific, this is not Logan Cooley specific, this is everybody specific, that it's, a big decision. There's so much that goes into it, that those ones, especially with a year to go, there's zero rush on those ones. But I think that you have a couple guys in that cycle that sign, right? And then everybody's mind goes to, okay, who's next? Who's in this class? Where it's going.
Yeah.
But everybody's uniquely situated that you don't have to sign 11 months before your contract's done, right? So,
do you ever
in Utah? It's been good.
Do you ever sit back and if you're in a situation like this, whether it's with him or any of your clients that are RFAs or potential RFAs, and somebody else signs, do you just sit back and wait to see when your phone blows up and how many people will be like, all right, what about this? What about your guy here? Is he next?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
maybe I'm guilty of that too sometimes.
Yeah, that happens. We know it's coming. Sometimes it's, again, taking a step back. The more media attention that hockey gets, the more people like you that are doing a great job covering it and talking about it, like that's all positive, right? Like my job would be easier for everybody just kind of like just zip it for a minute, right? But then nobody's talking about hockey and it's not in the news cycle. So this is what drives HRR. This is what drives people to games. This is what drives fantasy hockey. Like all this interest is here. So we can't, kind of bite the hand that feeds us, for sure. That I think that attention is good, and it's speculating about our clients, which is good, which means people are interested in our clients, which is a testament to their abilities. So all that stuff is good. But yeah, when somebody signs it's all right, hey, any update on your guy?
Right.
Which is fine. If it's a deal that is perceived as team friendly, we are likely going to be getting a text from a different team saying, oh, hey, did you see that deal? That seems like a good one, right? This seems like we're setting the market. And on the flip side, I probably sent out 32 texts after Kaprizov signed and said, all right, we got a couple GMs, we got a new target here. So it goes both ways. It's all kind of in good fun, but it's it's the phone is ringing all the time anyway. It's just what flavor we're getting that day.
Brian, this is more of maybe a general question. Has making a deal, or what goes into making a deal, changed over the last maybe 4 or 5 years as it was maybe 7 or 8 years ago? Or I know the economics are obviously different with more money, but in a sense of players now kind of realizing they have an opportunity to move places that they want to go with no trade clauses and signing bonuses and all of that. How much have things kind of changed a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's been, since kind of the flat cap era, whenever that's been, right? Since COVID, I think it's kind of been its own unique little ecosystem. And I think we'll look back over, I've been doing this 20 years now. So that was, whatever it's been, a quarter of my time maybe as an agent. I think that's going to go back, and that's going to be like the Byzantine era. We're going to look at like, oh, that was just kind of a chunk where everybody, jumped up a little bit, and you had this percentage of cap conversation that was really the only conversation, right? If a guy was a $10 million one, then he's 10-1, right? Because it's,
right,
we got 10% jump, right? Or whatever it is, or 1% or 5%. So a 10 goes to 10.5, or, whatever it is. So there's like kind of an era where we as agents, I think, felt slightly restricted. Back when my father's been doing it 40 years ago, started our agency. Back in that day, you could get $1 million signing bonuses for guys coming out of school, undrafted guys. You could get bonuses for finishing your degree. You could get anything. It was just like, it was open. So like that was, and you could really, I think he found it, we talked about it a lot, of like ways to make deals. The more flexibility, the more creativity you can have, saying, okay, we like this, but if you want him to come out of school early, this is the incentive that we want to do for whatever it is. So it was easier to make deals. I think as the cap got crunched and as some of that flexibility got taken out, I understand why, right? Like the term limits got capped at 8 years, now going to 7. The variations on a contract got altered where you couldn't have it as backdiving. Those things made it a little bit trickier to make deals. I think now that there's more expansive cap, I think teams are going to want to get a little bit more creative again inside the confines that we have, because they don't have the ability to say, hey, we understand that you're a $10 million guy. We agree with you that you're a $10 million guy, but look at our depth chart. We only have 8.5 million left on our chart. We'd love to have you at 10, and we agree, but sorry, it's all we got. So that's going to go away to some degree. So then it's okay. How else do we make a deal, right? So that's going to be interesting coming into this next trend, and I think a little bit of what we've seen in the very short term over the last couple weeks has been that there's going to be different flavors for different players. Just like we talked about Cooley, that there's no one situation and just, hey, we're going to look at exactly how many goals you have, how many assists you have. There's going to be different factors that go in of what's a team's competitiveness, how settled is the player in that community, what are the external things that make them want to be there, and that dollar might change. And I think that might feel a little foreign, but I think really for all of us in the real world, that's what it is anyway, right? Like if you're an accountant and you're making 45 grand, like you might not necessarily want to move 6 states over for 48 grand.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, my kids are in school here and like they're fine or whatever. Or you might be that guy that's like, yeah, that 3 grand is going to make a big difference for me. I have student loans and that's going to help get there. And the cost of living's better there. So that 3 grand to me feels like 15 grand. And then I'm going to be able to do a vacation that I wasn't able to, whatever it is. So like these decisions, I think, happen in the real world. Just the numbers are so preposterous in professional sports that it's like hard to internalize that, I think, sometimes. But I think now we're getting back into that era that like the players are just going to be able to make like real life decisions on some of this stuff, and the dollar amount, the AAV, the signing bonus, that thing is a big piece of it. For some guys, it's all of it. For some guys, it's less so, and I think we've seen that over the last couple of weeks. If that continues, we don't know, but that's been kind of the theme the last 2 weeks.
Brian, before we let you go, and thank you so much for jumping on with us. Just last thing from me, how much are you looking forward to those Cale Makar negotiations?
I think that was good. No, I mean, that parlays perfectly off what we just talked about, right? Like, It's going to be one that I can assure you, Cale Makar has not spent 1 second thinking about it yet.
I believe you.
Not the one who says his other contract's coming down. I don't know if he knows what 3 guys in the league make, right? Like he's focused on playing and winning, and it's why he's exceptional. But yeah, he's a guy that I feel confident will get a raise next contract.
That's fair to say.
You know what? That's probably the best possible way you could have answered that question, and I appreciate that so much. So thank you for doing this, Brian. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. Didn't have to do it, but we really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
You know, it's always interesting, Dave, when you have a player agent come on a show and talk about some certain things. I love his comment about Cale Makar and the Rays, but the economics of the league, I think, is one of the things that obviously interests me the most, and about, you know, just going and making a deal and what goes into that.
Yeah, and honestly, from the economic perspective, with, you know, and we might hear some discussion later this week because of the board meetings of the cap projections being altered a little bit, going from the 104 to 107, 108 next season, whatever the number is, the new projection potentially is. To see it get to that, and to see revenues continuing to increase, and then, you know, 115 to 120 the following season, then you incorporate expansion. Like, and yes, the expansion fees of 1 to 1.2 to 1.5 billion, maybe even more, that gets spread among the owners. But the HRR that's collected afterwards, the season tickets, the merch sales, the sponsorship deals, the television rights, the broadcasting, everything that's tied to it, that's just going to pump those numbers even further in terms of HRR and in terms of what the cap's potentially going to be. So I've got to imagine that some of the negotiations that, you know, Brian has, or other agents that are out there for some of their big time clients, for any of their clients, all of these numbers are going to keep going up. And we talked about it last week, Ben, like these big numbers we're seeing, 11, 12, 15, 17 million, get used to it, because we're going to be seeing a hell of a lot more as the years progress.
Yeah. And I think it's obviously great for the league, especially when valuations of franchises are also skyrocketing. Yeah. You're seeing, you know, valuations of numbers that maybe some of these owners never really thought was possible for their team. So I think that's, when you go and look at it, obviously another very interesting point. But the other one that was for me was when Brian talked about the CHL process and the NCAA, and how basically players are free agents every single year, and how much that's now going to change, especially when it comes into NIL and being able to make money and things like that. So definitely another avenue where, you know, it's definitely going to be fascinating to watch here.
Yeah, the landscape has changed completely.
Yeah.
You talk to some people in the CHL, and they're still very adamant that their product is superior, and so on and so on. But yeah, it does. Again, it changes the landscape. It alters things a little bit for everybody, and it just provides additional options in terms of player growth. Like back in the day, like Austin Matthews, for example, he went over to Switzerland.
Yep.
In order to play, because he wanted to take those next steps in his game. We see Gavin McKenna leave the Dub and head over to the college, and like it's totally it's similar to what Austin did back then, because that was the only additional option for him. Now you've got the NCAA route, which changes things a little bit for a lot of players. Plus, you get a free ride, but you get a piece of paper as well sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, you definitely do. But Dave, this was fun. I like the fact that we were able to have Brian on. So huge shout out to Brian Bartlett for joining us on this episode of DFO Insider Edition. Get to our pick, or my pick, as we look to games that are happening, presented by Bet365 a little bit later on this week. I'm going to go to the Saturday slate, Saturday, October 18th. I'm taking the Leafs at home to the Seattle Kraken, and then I will also take the Vegas Golden Knights at home to the Calgary Flames. Let's add a Jack Eichel goal on that, so you probably get some pretty good odds if you do all of that with those three. As obviously, it's a presentation of Bet365. Whatever you bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. Use the code NATION. Bet365 must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Dave, that's it. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate this.
Love it. See you next week.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.